Well, Brexit could also mean changes to UK foreign policy. For more on this, I'm joined by Ian Bond, who's Director of Foreign Policy at the Centre for European Reform. Good evening to you. Many thanks for joining us on Euronews tonight. So when it comes to foreign policy, well, the EU is clearly an important power broker and power bloc. So where does that leave the UK?
Well, the UK has taken a decision not to have any institutional relationship with the EU. That was a decision by Boris Johnson's government. Theresa May was much more enthusiastic about continued foreign policy cooperation with the EU. And I think we're going to have to see whether the UK still has the kind of influence that it had when it was a member.
Yeah, well, it's unlikely to have the same kind of oomph on its own, really, isn't it? And if we look to issues like Belarus, where the EU was slow, could the UK suddenly eke out an advantage for itself because it will be ultimately much more nimble?
Well, I think that's the trade-off. The UK can be more agile because the EU has to try and get 27 countries to reach a consensus about any action in the foreign policy area. And in the case of Belarus, Cyprus, which had its own issues regarding Turkey, basically held hostage EU agreement on sanctions against Belarus in the hope of extracting some concessions in regard to Turkey. So the UK can be more agile, but at the same time, it's likely to carry less weight. So if we look at the sanctions that the EU imposed on Russia, the EU is Russia's largest trading partner. The UK is a pretty insignificant trading partner of Russia. Therefore, even if it agrees quite quickly on sanctions, they're less likely to be taken seriously in Moscow.
Yeah, absolutely. The UK is already looking to new allies, however. Do you see a scenario where the UK could find itself on opposite sides from the EU when it comes to foreign policy objectives? And what would the ramifications of that be?
That's a very interesting question. So far, the UK and the EU have remained on the same side, even on some controversial issues. And I take Iran in particular, where even though the US under Donald Trump withdrew from the nuclear agreement that had been negotiated by the US, the UK, France, Germany, Russia and China, the UK continued to stick with Germany and France in trying to preserve that agreement. So, we stayed on board with that. There are many, many areas where I think the UK and the EU will continue to be aligned, whether that's to do with Russia or most likely China, issues like that. The one where I can see already some divergences developing is over Turkey, where the UK seems to have been rather more sympathetic to Turkey's case in some of the territorial disputes in the Eastern Mediterranean, or at any rate more neutral on them than the EU has been, where obviously Cyprus has a voice and where France has been very vocal in criticising Turkish behaviour in the Eastern Mediterranean. So that's an area where the UK has taken a slightly different position. But what we haven't seen yet is what happens if there's a real confrontation in which the UK and the EU take opposite sides. And I hope that the UK will find its way back to the table in Brussels, find its way back into some sort of relationship with the EU on foreign policy to try to ensure that we don't get to that situation.
Interesting times ahead. Well, many thanks, Ian Bond, for joining us on the programme.